Rider Gotchard is a superhero show crossed with a monster collector. It's also a secret society urban fantasy plus magic high school dealio. If that sounds appealing to you, then yeah, I do recommend you go ahead and at least try it out. It's a pretty fun show. Just know that it's a fairly episodic affair throughout. Even during its final stretch, when the show really ought to be tying up its lingering plot threads, it still structures itself with the smaller self-contained stories as its primary focus, A-plot, while the serialized narrative is very much relegated to the background B-plot. It's not that the A-plot is ever bad, it's just I kinda get the sense that one or two of those stories could have been trimmed down somewhat to give the B-plot more focus. And in general, I think that's what Gotchard lacks, focus. The chemis are a great example of this. These are what provides the monster collector aspect, 101 creatures that need to be rounded up before the show's end. That provides a very good narrative skeleton for the show, because no one-off monster of the week is ever a filler story. Defeating the monstrous amalgam and capturing the chemi that comes out of it always contributes to the whole set. However, 50 episodes is just not enough time to build a rapport with 101 little guys, even though I really want to. And that's even before you start factoring in the variants and the evolutions, which do not count towards the total. Even the main chemis fall victim to this. The protagonist Hotaro Ichinose often fuses with two in specific, those are Hopper 1 and Steam Liner, to transform into his superhero alter ego. Despite being a third of the eponymous Kamen Rider Gotchard, Steam Liner gets next to no focus until Iron Gotchard comes along, and even then it was as its upgraded form, 10-liner. And yet still, it doesn't get any true characterization. 10-liner is largely just a power-up item. I don't think I'd even mind if the chemis were just little caricatures, but as they exist, there's not a lot distinguishing them from literal trading cards. Though I suppose being collectible MacGuffins with the personality of cardboard is appropriate, however unfortunately so. If Kamen Rider Gotchard was a purely episodic series, perhaps they could have gotten away with covering the entire set by having one focus chemi and one enemy amalgam for every episode for the entire run. But obviously that train has long since left the station. However, that's not to say that the show has poor character writing. When the show has to purposely lock down and focus on a subject, it is genuinely stellar. For instance, Kamen Rider Gotchard Daybreak only shows up for 3 to 4 episodes, and for this duration, he is only showcased in suit, complemented by mostly enigmatic voice lines. In total, I think he only has 15 minutes of screen time in the show, at best, and they still manage to build a full character out of him. That's where the character writing of the show really shines. When there's a soft limitation on how much a character is available for, they really narrow it down to the bare essentials. Kamen Rider Legend is similarly also only in the show for 3 episodes, but in that time, Ho-Oh Kaguya Courts goes through a fairly significant character arc, one that builds off a lot of Hotaro's core character qualities, no less. The problem is, for all these upsides, the contrapositive is also true. Characters who are around for most of the show's run tend to get lost in character progression limbo. Rine Kudo is billed as the show's deuteragonist, and also the franchise's first female secondary writer, Jade. And ironically, arguably the worst thing that happens to her is that she becomes an active superhero because she self-actualizes and her character progression slows to a snail's pace. But that's not even the worst of it, because there's also Spanner Kurogane, the third hero rounding out the trio of heroic Kamen Riders. Once Spanner becomes Kamen Rider Valvarad, he hits a point where if he develops any further, he'll align too closely with Hotaro for there to be any meaningful ideological contrast. And of course, it makes the most sense for these differences to come to a head during the 11th hour. Which means, up until that point, Spanner's character arc functionally has to be put on pause. It's not that Rine's and Spanner's stories are bad, but it feels like the writers only had this much story to tell with these two. While it makes sense to close out their character journeys towards the tail end of the show, that's at odds with the format of Kamen Rider series in general. The expected year-long runtime of a Kamen Rider show means that, ironically, the moment they hit their stride, they also get stuck spinning their wheels. By contrast, the villains aren't even remotely weighed down by this. I think the narrative not quite so heavily demanding their presence helps a lot in alleviating the problems that plague the protagonists. To start, we have Atropos, Lachesis, and Clotho, who are the primary leading antagonist force during the first stretch of the show. The sisters are around for the longest, so naturally they get the most development and humanization as a result. Eventually, Gurion is revealed as the puppeteer pulling their strings. He's fantastic, just this manipulative, slimy bugger made to be hated. And to round things out for the final stretch of the series, we have Gigist, Germain, and Gailea. They're the fairly bog-standard, sealed-away ancient evil dealio. It's a nice variety platter of very solid antagonists. Overall, I'd say that Kamen Rider Gotchard is a show with really, really high highs, and I'd hesitate to say it has low lows. I'm just going to call it low lulls. For my personal preferences, I don't think it ever really strikes the right balance of the serialized and the episodic. I find that the series spends a bit too much time faffing about, but I do like it a lot when the characters and the narratives are making substantial progress. If you've seen the show, what did you think of it? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, and until next time, see ya.